good time of the day to you, depending on where you are. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the challenges that we see in the industry, how that affects test and quality, and how we're looking to address that. No matter what kind of software development practices you're following, there are common elements of the SDLC that we all work through: building our apps, test, debug, deploy, operate, and monitor, right? Throughout these phases of the life cycle, there's always points of friction. And especially when it comes to test and quality, Sauce Labs is looking to identify what those points of friction are and provide tools to help you solve them. So for example, when you're in the build phase and deciding not only what to build next, but what bugs we need to fix because they have the most impact, either to users that were using the software during a beta, to the QA person that was actually running the test, or if it's data that you've collected from things that are impacting the app in production when it's been released. During the build phase, you always need some sets of tools to help you prioritize what are the most important things to fix. During test, it's all about what type of test should we be running, depending on the change that we're pushing through the system. It's also all about the speed of test. How long does it take for the test phase of your build pipeline, and is that blocking, and how can we improve that? During debug, it's about how much data do we have to help support the resolution of the problems that we've identified? Do you have enough context? Do you need to hunt and peck and go through log files, or is all the information surfaced at the right time? And then deploy and operate. When we move from web apps to mobile apps, especially as we move to mobile apps, once you've deployed, you lose control. You don't get as much visibility into how mobile devices might be performing or how your app is performing. So you need tools to gather that information and provide it back. So again, you can decide what's important to fix. So these are the challenges we see. Our customers have been telling us this. Hopefully you've experienced some of this as well. And as we talk through the rest of this presentation, we're going to share how Sauce is looking to further approach these areas and provide solutions to help address the challenges. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk a little bit about the platform as we dig in.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, so I want to go over what we consider the Sauce Labs platform to be, and our solutions all fit within it. We think about it really as three main parts, right? So the first and the foundation of the Sauce Labs platform is an orchestration and infrastructure layer, right? So this is what most of you use on a daily, hourly basis to run your browser tests, your mobile tests on real devices or emulators and simulators, and generally get your tests executed throughout your pipelines. On top of that, we have a layer of applications that are built on top of that underlying infrastructure. This provides different solutions like mobile performance testing or accessibility testing, right? Various different frameworks we support all fit on top of that foundational infrastructure. And then all of those tests that are run and those solutions built on top of that generate a lot of data that we then can create insights from that help you implement different testing strategies with all the different personas that are involved in the software development practice. And in general, all of this comes together to create a platform that helps you make all kinds of decisions about the different testing strategies you want to implement across your organization. That could be you trying to transition from manual to automated. It could be the framework or language selection choice that your different teams are using. Or it could be whether or not you want to release on a weekly, daily, hourly, monthly basis, right? Our platform is made to help you navigate all those different challenges. This platform has been operating for years now, over a decade, and there's with that comes a lot of scale. So there's some really interesting numbers about how the scale that Sauce Labs has achieved. So in 2022, this is for cross-browser testing, we've surpassed 1 billion tests run in that calendar year. Most of any year since we've been tracking this, we've run over 5 billion tests, and so just a massive scale of tests being run, and we get tests constantly. We are a business critical system for many customers that are just constantly running tests in their pipelines on Sauce Labs, with nearly 20 million tests per week being executed in Sauce Labs. And then obviously the foundation of that infrastructure is the wide breadth of operating systems and versions that we support. On the mobile side, we have some very interesting growth numbers and scale numbers because this is one of the largest growth areas for us as a business. And I think that's indicative of just mobile application development growing overall across the industry. One of the first stats that we love to see is the adoption of testing on more than one target platform at a time, with most customers running tests on 2 or more. So you can think of running your tests on iOS and Android, but we also see customers running on multiple versions of iOS or multiple versions of Android, and we think that's a great way to implement a testing strategy for mobile. I mentioned mobile is one of the highest growth areas. We see we've seen over 350% increase in just the number of testing done on real devices. And so this is basically leading to a lot of investment that we're making in our mobile testing infrastructure. And although not as big as not as heavy as the cross-browser testing on a per weekly basis, we still see massive numbers of tests being run on our real device clouds across the globe.
Something that's a little newer to the sauce family is the error reporting product provided through the acquisition of the product called Backtrace. And I really appreciate everyone joining the call today, because I think there's a few things that you'll learn that you have access to with the sauce platform that you might not be taking advantage of. And one of them is error reporting, especially for mobile applications. The error reporting platform today already processing, nice round number again, over 1 billion. I think it's more than 1.5 billion, in fact, when I look at a number of on-prem instances as well, but over 1 billion monthly error reports. And these errors are errors and crashes that are happening on production or released mobile applications, as well as on websites powered by JavaScript and the frameworks and the like, or native applications that are running on Windows or Mac or even IoT devices. And all those types of errors are being processed by Backtrace, supporting thousands of organizations actually that are using Backtrace to find and fix those errors that are happening either in test or more frequently here in production after it's been released. And the improvements that they see are 50% time generally for reduction in the amount of time it takes to resolve these issues. And the reason they see that is all about the context that's collected and the grouping that's done and the data that's exposed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in more detail later on today. I think from here, we're going to go into a quick agenda of the roadmap topics that we're going to discuss here. So for the majority of the rest of the call, we're actually going to dig in to some specific capabilities, some of them in the middle of being released right now. Others have been available for a little while. Mike's going to start off talking about that first layer of the platform. I think most of the folks on the call are familiar with the kind of core sauce offering around infrastructure. And now you'll see us talking more about orchestration and the tooling that's supported there. You're going to hear about improvements to the VM cloud that we provide for Windows, Mac, and now coming soon Linux. You're going to hear about something extremely exciting we're calling instant boot sims, which are essentially iOS simulators that get loaded, including the Appium framework, faster than you're able to get on your local desktops. Third, we'll talk about a new region that we're starting to deploy in the US for devices and having that availability in an additional data region. And then finally, another exciting capability, Orchestrate, a beta that we've been working on, which is a new way to package and run your tests on sauce to see huge performance improvements depending on the complexity of your tests, as well as be able to start to take advantage of some cool orchestration technologies and techniques that we'll talk about as well.
First thing we want to talk about is enhancements that we're making to that foundational virtual cloud, right, where you're doing all your browser and emulator and simulator testing. So when we think of our cloud, we really think of 3 main clouds: our Windows operating system cloud, the Mac cloud, and then a newly launching Linux cloud. So on the Windows cloud, we've made a ton of advancements in the dynamic scalability of that cloud, so that you always have a virtual machine ready when you need it, as well as increasing the amount of resources available in each virtual machine that you're running your browser test on. This essentially means we've doubled the amount of RAM, the amount of CPU, the network bandwidth, and all that leads to performance improvements in your test execution speed. Our measurements are around like 20 to 30%. We're doing the same thing on the Mac cloud side, providing that same, making investments to provide the same dynamic scalability to increase the amount of Mac VMs available, as well as really re-architecting the virtualization stack. And this is so that we can take more advantage of the the GPU on the hardware itself. The more recent versions of iOS and macOS rely heavily on the GPU to provide the experience that most of us use for development on a daily basis. So our VM stack has to needed to take advantage of the same thing. And then one of the exciting new enhancements that's currently right now in beta, if you want to sign up for it, contact your CSM, is the launch of a new Linux cloud offering. And so this provides more ways to get so a little more improved performance, especially for those tests that you want to run earlier in your pipeline, where the the operating system, you might not need that Windows operating system or that Mac operating system. So we think that's going to be a great option for many types of tests earlier in your pipeline. Moving on to Instant Boot Sims, another one we're super excited about. Sims is a shorthand for simulators, right? iOS simulators for mobile tests. Let's start with the problem, right? iOS simulators are generally inherently fairly, robust applications that need to run, and they take a while to load. In a virtualized remote cloud such as Sauce Labs, they take around 30 seconds, 40 seconds, sometimes 60 seconds. All depends on the resource contention happening on that machine. And then if you multiply that by the number of tests that you're trying to run at a given time, it can really make your test suites execute really long. Same thing happens locally, right? If you've ever done any local development on simulators, it takes a while to start that application. So we looked to solve that problem. And I think one of the best ways to talk through this is just to show a quick video we have here. On the right side is the normal booted, just the normal experience that you're used to today before this launch. On the left is the instant booted simulators. And what you'll see is just that the instant booted simulators start much faster because they're already booted and ready to execute your tests. What you're seeing is through our live testing experience, or the manual testing experience we have on our web UI. But the same exact thing happens when you run automated tests like an Appium test suite on the simulators. They will instantly be ready, and you basically cut down around those 30 to 60 seconds, maybe, again, depending on the resource contention. And then you'll see in here the little timestamp of just taking 20 to 30 seconds away from this specific example test, which, again, when you multiply that by the number of tests you are running, which our customers run very large scale test suites, thousands of tests on simulators, it really adds up to reduce overall build times. We're providing this for the latest OSs and latest -1 OSs across both iPads and iOS. That's because we're doing this to represent, what's the most used operating system combos for our customers. We still support all the wide breadth of operating system versions and makes and models and simulators. They just aren't using the instant boot capability. I mentioned some of these value propositions, but just to reiterate them, right? By doing this, we're seeing, especially for really like short tests, a lot of times the percentage improvement is very big. So up to 60% improvement by drastically reducing that startup time. You get improved reliability because there's less variables now happening when you kick off a test. You don't have to wait we know that the VM is ready to go and the simulator is ready to execute your test. So there's improved reliability of some flaky tests or errors that you might get. And then it drastically outperforms even local development. And this is really important when you think about simulators, because part of what we definitely promote is using emulators and simulators earlier in your development cycle to run tests at scale cost effectively. And it's the same kind of thing you might be doing in your local development. So excited about that. Moving on to US East region launch. So for those, I'm sure you're familiar, Sauce Labs, we have certain regions that we deploy and operate, and we deploy certain product features in those regions to match the customer demand. We have US West and EU Central. Right now, we're launching a US East data center for our private and public real device clouds. Now, what do I mean by private and public? Just to make sure everybody understands, when you're doing mobile testing on Sauce Labs real devices, you have a choice whether or not you want to use our public cloud pools, which are essentially a pool of shared devices that after you use them, they get cleaned so that it's a clean slate for the next user to use them. But you have that provides a wide variety of phone versions. But you can also choose a private device, and that device you get to choose exactly which device you want, and that is only available for you at any one time. Perfect for more secure testing scenarios. US East is launched now with support for both. For those teams located closer to US East, latency is definitely improved, right? That's a big deal, the distance between wherever the test is being run, whether it's manual or automated, and then the actual underlying phone that it's run on. So we see those latency improvements. Because this is our newest data center, we've also heavily invested in the overall infrastructure of that data center to make sure it's got the latest and greatest tech from a security and performance standpoint. Those improvements will be rolled out to other data centers as well, but this gives us an opportunity to really invest there. So super excited about that. Again, talk to your CSM if you're interested in taking a look at the US East data center. All right, last but not least is our brand new product offering called SOS Orchestrate. This is one that we are super excited to bring to market. So let me go into what this really does, right? So starting off with some of the key challenges that really sparked this idea. We definitely know and see from all of our customers, and we're all in the software development game, that time to market's key. We have to get iterations out there quickly. But we also see that as automated testing has been increasing in adoption, you see lengthy execution times, you see long build cycles, and a lot of testing becoming that bottleneck in the CI/CD process, then thus slowing down your velocity, right? And as the CI process has gotten more complicated, it's become more difficult to orchestrate those tests across different environments and across different teams. And then when you think about doing this at scale across an entire organization, it's costly, and the maintenance burden can be large. So we're introducing a new product to help solve this. And I think the best way to describe this new product is to contrast it with how you currently interact with Sauce Labs and really any remote cloud provider for running tests. So in a remote world, the world of today, your test code runs in your CI environment or your local environment from outside of Sauce Labs or outside of really any remote provider. Every time those test scripts are run, they're generating what are called commands, WebDriver commands, that are then interacting with the browser or the real device or the emulator and simulator. And each of those commands, like get text element or click this button or scroll this page, those generate network calls. And the farther you are away from the browser, like physically farther away from the browser or the device, introduces longer latency and instability just because of because of the instability of a network. With SOS Orchestrate, we're moving to host the actual test script itself. So instead of those test scripts running from your environment or outside of Sauce Labs, they will run right next to the browser or real device or emulator and simulator within the Sauce Labs cloud, thus removing all of those network calls essentially, which creates greater stability, but most importantly, improves overall test execution time a lot. I'll go into a little more detail about how it works. It's built on Docker. So we're utilizing a fairly ubiquitous technology that is across, has made its way across development teams all over the world. And the reason why we did this is so that we can support all different types of languages and frameworks and on all the dependencies that come with them, right? A lot of our customers will build custom frameworks and have all kinds of supporting code around their test scripts. So Docker provides a way for us to, Docker containers provide a way for us to package all that up and allow us to execute it. It works for both mobile and browser testing, right? Because this is separate from the underlying Sauce Labs browser or device. It's really just taking the test script, and we're providing the infrastructure for you to run those test scripts in our grid. It still connects; those test scripts can still connect to the same browsers and mobile devices that they do today. There's really no change that you need to make to your test scripts. If they work today, they'll continue to work in SOS Orchestrate, just without all those network calls. We focus heavily on the CI integration here because that's where we're plugged into a lot. We've integrated SOS Orchestrate with our SOS control tool, which is a very developer-friendly CLI. There's also an API if you want to use it, but I prefer using the CLI tool. It just is a nice abstraction. It makes it very easy to plug into any CI provider, as well as run it from your local. And the test result experience that you have come to know and love in the Sauce Labs UI will continue to work as it does today. There's no changes there. We integrate directly into the test result page and the API that you're calling today. You get the same logs, the same video recordings. All of that doesn't change. This is again about us providing that infrastructure to run your actual test in our grid. I've mentioned some of these benefits, but these benefits are really why we're so excited to bring this product to market. By removing all those network calls, we see test execution times reduced by up to 70%. And it really just goes bigger and bigger the more complex the tests are. So by complexity, I mean the more network calls that are being generated. So the more commands or interactions with the browser and device. That developer experience that I mentioned is another key value proposition. If it's not easy to use, we don't believe you'll use it. And we focused a lot on making it very simple to get started, choosing the right foundational technologies and integrating it into our very developer-friendly Sauce Control CLI tool. By doing all of this and reducing those test execution times by so much and providing that infrastructure to actually run your test, we're seeing CI costs reduced because of that. And I think that's very important in sort of this climate. And then removing, again, all those network calls improves the reliability. Error rates go down, those false failures go down because, again, it's all about removing all the variables of the network that are introduced when you use a remote provider.
We'll dive in now kind of to the upper part of the triangular pyramid we saw earlier, where we'll talk more about tooling that's available to you, some of which you might be familiar with, other tooling might be new to you, as well as some of the new capabilities in each of these pieces of tooling. So first, we'll talk about mobile app diagnostics. This is going to be within your test results, the new tools that are available for looking at how the app and the device was performing during test. Second, we'll go and look at what's called mobile beta testing. This is also one of the acquired technologies from a few years ago called Test Fairy, which allows you to take testing and go outside of your testing infrastructure and run beta programs with your own internal testers or external testers as well. And it's a complete set of both app and beta management and distribution, as well as feedback collection tools that we'll talk about. The third area, we'll talk about error reporting. We alluded a little bit to this, and you'll see error reporting start to show up inside of your tests. But I want to focus here on the post-release error reporting that's provided by Backtrace. Some of the capabilities there, again, for mobile app teams that you might not be aware of, and some of the new improvements around usability and alerting that comes with error reporting. And then finally, insights and analytics. Mike mentioned before, running billions of tests now. There's a lot of data that we have, and we've already started putting some of that to use with things like failure analysis, which we released a few months ago to help pinpoint what type of changes might have caused a particular failure or a cascade of failures that you're seeing within tests. So we'll talk a little bit more about insights and the improvements in that area as well. So let's dive into mobile app diagnostics to start. Mobile app diagnostics has been rolling out for the last few months. In your test results today for tests running on public or private devices, you'll see things like device interactions. So now, as your user is navigating the app, either automated or live, you'll see what they're clicking on, what they're scrolling through. And that helps to recreate any situations that they encountered, see if they're fully reproducible, et cetera. Second thing that was added in was called device vitals. This is instrumentation of the device and the application so that you can see CPU utilization, memory utilization, and response time, and see all of that throughout the life cycle of the test so that you can identify if there are new spikes that are being encountered. Somebody might have checked in a new asset or a new graphic that's causing a memory spike, and that impacts poorly some low-end devices that are important to you to support. That sort of information now is really very easily visible through device vitals. The third thing that was added, API and network capture. This is all of the request and the response information going back and forth between the client and the server, and putting it, again, in context of the test results allows you to help to diagnose if there's a problem, server side, client side, if there's a hang or a wait, or just misinformation being passed around. And now the most recent is crash and error reporting. A number of months ago, there was some lightweight integration that was provided that required you as developers or QA individuals to instrument your app. We've removed all of that. And now, built into all of your testing of real devices, you will automatically get crashes and errors that are occurring on your iOS and Android devices. Those crashes and errors, you're going to see it surfacing lines of code that are being executed and causing errors and crashes. As well as correlation to things like line numbers. So you can go into the source code and have your engineers really pinpoint where these problems are occurring. So that error and crash is kind of the most recent. And in the next few slides, I'll just show you a quick example of the evolution of mobile app diagnostics to where we are today. So here, this is what mobile app diagnostics was looking like as early as the end of last year. You see on the left, the interactions that were occurring, what the user was tapping on, down at the bottom, those device vitals that I referenced. And then we also started to see where app crashes started to show up. So just a little banner that says app crashed and some information from the crash log to start to identify what was going on. Over the last few weeks, we click ahead, new versions of the UI have been introduced, and now crashes themselves have been kind of extracted and they're shown on their own tab. You can see that tags are applied. So an app crash tag is applied to the test results. So now it's really easy as you're filtering test results, not only to see tests that failed, but also those that crashed. And a crash doesn't always equate to a failure. It depends on how well your test was written. But now this is kind of surfacing for you the crashes that were occurring. If I look further down on the left there, the crash description is really highlighting for the developer as well as the QA person, but really for the developer, what the stack trace was and what was being called that caused this crash. In this case, a null pointer exception. On the right, just log files and having all that information in context. The last screen I'll show, this is what I really start to enjoy and where I think we support more collaboration between the QA folks and the engineering folks. You can share those test results with your developers. And on the left, you'll see here, they're looking at the crash logs that were identified. On the right, this is their source code in GitHub or whatever tool that they're using for managing source code, and really easily being able to pinpoint line 140 causing the error on the left. On the right, we see line 140 calling a function on an array and a set of values. If we look up a little further, we can see that set of values has a null pointer, has a null value in it. Therein lies the problem. And this is how, this is why our customers tell us they're saving kind of 50% of the amount of time it takes them to resolve the errors, because they're able to take this, capture it, get all the context together and share it with people so that they can more quickly pinpoint the issues. So super excited to see more mobile app diagnostic usage in your test, during your test cycle, and appreciate any feedback you have as you continue to use those. Second area we'll dive into is mobile beta testing. So those apps, mobile apps that you load into Sauce, not only can you use them for running local or automated or manual tests, but on the next slide here, we'll show how you can also load those apps and distribute them to a set of beta testers. This is essentially a replacement if you've used tools like TestFlight or App Center. Sauce Labs mobile beta testing replaces those tools and allows you to collect a good amount of user feedback and stability information as you're doing beta tests or other sorts of constrained app distribution. First part of the solution is the app distribution itself. So load your iOS, your Android apps into the system, either a public cloud that we provide, or if you're very security conscious, a private cloud that can be fully isolated and you have full control over all the apps and non-sharing of the infrastructure with others. The apps can be distributed to users based on emails, or they can land on a landing page based that has download capabilities for them. And then the ability to do things like cancel, the ability to use the app after a certain period of time, or do auto upgrades of the app. All of that is included with the app distribution system. Once you're distributing the app and your app is instrumented, you can do things like in-app bug reports. So the shake of the device will allow the tester to annotate and provide some user feedback. So in addition to your testers providing their quantitative and qualitative feedback, you can get qualitative feedback from end users themselves. To support that feedback, video recording is there. So you can have a full recording of the session, not only those interactions that we saw before with the real device cloud, we get that through mobile beta testing too, but in addition to those interactions, you can see full recordings of the users using the beta apps themselves. All of that is integrated with things like Jira and Slack, so feedback and errors and so on can be propagated to the development team. And it's built in, it has additional built-in security, as I mentioned before, private cloud as an option, as well as SAML-based sign-on and support for beta distributors through that mechanism. A few pictures of what mobile beta testing looks like, showing those interactions again and what the user was doing, as well as a video. So everything that you're familiar with from RDC, you also get by sharing it to users and having them run it on their own. User feedback. So you could just see some information like a plain text field where folks are saying what's working, what's not working, qualitative feedback, and then the ability to link that to things like Jira for processing. Again, available to you today. Some small improvements recently, but now fully baked into your navigation in Sauce Labs today. All right, the third area we'll talk about is error reporting. And again, this is error reporting now after you've released your app. If I step through to the next slide, we'll talk about what we see teams doing with error reporting. And we break it down to three kind of key capabilities, things they're trying to do. First, it's capturing the error. Errors that occur with like a fatal crash, right? Where the app actually crashes and restarts, or if it experiences a hang or a low memory event, or if there are just general exceptions or errors that the app can recover from, and you still want to share that with your team and analyze it. All of that's available for capture. So a lot of folks focus on making sure that they get all of the types of errors and then as much context as they can surrounding it. The context includes things like the operating system version, custom information like your app version, as well as system info like memory usage, process age, and other associated kind of system level pieces of information. All of that is captured so that when folks need to prioritize, they have the right information in front of them. It's not only based on how many times something occurs, but it might be based on which users it's impacting. Is it impacting my high value users versus my low value users? Or is it at a certain time during the app when we're expecting a transaction from the user? That may not happen very frequently, but if you need the right signals and the right metadata in order to prioritize those things effectively. And then finally, resolution. I'm able to identify that these errors are occurring. How fast can the developers pinpoint the problem and fix it? And it deals, in this case, we're talking about how do we make sure we get everything contextually provided, shared in the right place, so I don't have to go hunt to a log file or load up information into a different environment. So these are all the things that our users of Backtrace today, the error reporting solution today, are using in order to really reduce their time to detection and resolution in half. Some recent improvements for Backtrace are around alerting and ease of use. So if you're a user today, if you're a new user, you'll start to see some of these capabilities first. When errors occur, we want to make sure that the teams are responsible for deciding when they need to be alerted. Not every error is impactful. Issue-based alerts here allow people to customize when alerts are driven to things like Slack or Jira based on number of times things occur or number of users impacted during a certain time period. So if you want to know a new version of your app is released, if it impacts more than 50 users in 10 minutes, send a notification. So this is a new capability, one of the commonly requested ones that we're seeing a lot of uptake in. The second is our query builder. all of this metadata that can be captured during a crash or an error is indexed. In the past, Backtrace required you to have some level of knowledge of what you're indexing so that you can identify what to search for. This Query Builder UI now eases the experience so that when you have hundreds of points of data that you want to query from, it becomes easier to identify what they are based on groupings, suggestions, and more English-friendly names for the types of data that are collected. So we're seeing a lot of uptake in these two capabilities for those thousands of organizations I mentioned before that are using Backtrace today for solving their problems. And if you're doing mobile app development and mobile app testing, this is another sauce capability that you may not have been aware of that's available to you. The last area I'm going to touch on is insights and analytics. A little review first of the sets of insights that are available today. Again, in your Sauce app on the left-hand side, you see insights. Insights allows you to view data across a week, a month, a few months, and the scope can further be customized to tests that you run or tests that your group runs. There's a set of ways to customize the level of data that you're retrieving here. And the data that you're looking at is things like statistical trends. How many tests passed and failed? Are you getting the proper coverage in terms of devices and operating systems? And are you running the tests for the appropriate amount of time across those? Evaluating if a test has started to become flaky at one point in time. All of that gets surfaced through the Insights tool. Most recently, I mentioned before, we introduced failure analysis. So I encourage you again to check out the failure analysis tab under Insights. If you're running automation today and seeing a set of test failures, we will look through those failures and try and identify for you if there's specific changes in code or expected values that we're not seeing, which is causing that cascade of failures. The last thing I'll mention here, new improvement that is rolling out right now, is the combination of the real device data and the virtual device data. Prior to this, Insights really covered all of the virtual infrastructure. So the browsers, the virtual emulator, simulator, et cetera. Now, all of the data from the real devices is also flowing in. So it truly has become a single platform for all of your mobile and browser Insight data. So the screenshot here is just showing coverage of tests across a set of real devices. In this case, lots of iPhones being tested. I think I see one Samsung Galaxy in there as well, but a useful report for someone who's looking to make sure that we have the right set of coverage there.
Before we jump to questions, I do just want to let you know that while Jason and I we love talking to customers and users every day. We can't talk to everybody all the time. So you can always get in touch with us through we were launching a new portal that you can not only see our roadmap, see things that we're thinking about doing, things that are in progress, maybe things that are in beta that you want to sign up for, but also submit new ideas, right? You can give us your ideas and upvote other ideas as well. So there's a link there, but you can come to this link and please do give us all your ideas. So definitely want to say thank you for attending and staying with us throughout all this. No, it was a lot. Shir, how are we doing on questions? Should we get to a couple of those?
Yeah, definitely. We have a good amount. So let's start with, is Sauce Orchestrate live now? And does that have GitHub and GitLab connectivity?
Yeah, so a good question. Sauce Orchestrate is currently in a limited beta. So if you want to try it out, talk to your CSM. We are so close to launching this GA in May. So beta's been going great, and we're really excited to bring this to market. The connection to GitHub, GitLab works just great, right? Sauce Orchestrate is all about building and wrapping your test in an image, and then in a Docker image, and then making that image accessible to us. You can use GitHub's Docker registry or GitLab's Docker registry. That's just fine. And then kicking off all your tests through GitHub Actions or whatever your CI provider is of choice works seamlessly. So definitely excited for you to get to try it out.
All right. With Orchestrate, should any baseline visual snapshots be part of the package test bundle, or will it be able to download images during test runtime?
I think this has maybe to do with visual testing, maybe not Sauce Orchestrate. Does that just make sure we understand the question?
If the person who wrote that question wants to say anything, or we can get back to you.
Maybe Jason, if
All
you
right.
want to give a quick overview of Sauce Visual, it could help.
Yeah, I think I'll see if the person wants to.
All right. So we can skip this for now, and we'll get back to whoever wrote this question.
But I will say, as Mike was saying, post session here, we do have some questions about visual. We've had a visual product here at Sauce. We're in the middle of redesigning it, and really appreciate input and look forward to sharing some more information about it with the team soon.
I wonder if the question, I'm seeing Ben come in here with some chat about storing visual comparison snapshots in the bundle. So if we're talking about, right, if it is talking about Sauce Orchestrate, right, and then and if you're doing some visual testing within your test suite that you're running, you can totally connect to S3 to download. You have multiple options here with Sauce Orchestrate. You could include them within the Docker image itself if you wanted to, or if your test framework already is calling out to S3 or some other object storage to go and download images, that works. That's fine as well. So you have that network connectivity, and there's all kinds of options and functionality we have in Sauce Orchestrate that lets you keep security top of mind, so that if you have to connect to S3, you're most likely including some AWS credentials. We don't recommend you bake that into the image at all. We recommend part of our API allows you to configure those credentials in transit, and we don't store them. You don't have to worry about that. So from a security standpoint, it's good. We'll follow up definitely with some docs, right? We have in our documentation, you can read about this and I can get a sense of it.
All right. Would storing scripts source code remotely in Docker inside Sauce environment for test execution cause any violations?
So this is definitely something, we get questions about all the time. I'm assuming violations meaning security violations, I think. And I think that from a security standpoint, we've tried to take every caution we can, right? So with Sauce Orchestrate falls under the same security standards of the rest of Sauce Labs. We're SOC 2 compliant, SOC 2 certified, ISO 2700 certified as well. So Sauce Orchestrate falls aligned with that. We don't the image itself that you would make available is stored in a registry of your choice. We don't actually provide a registry. We connect to standard registries out there that you might use, and then the containers are sandboxed when they're running, so that we do that for not only your security but our security as well of the platform. And then those containers are ephemeral. They get destroyed as soon as the tests are done running. So you really have full control over what goes into that image and the life cycle of the container that's running your tests. And then, like I said, there's a lot of mechanisms to transfer secrets around, so that you never have to risk those secrets being compromised. And we don't store them anywhere. That's all just over the wire.
Right. Is the US East region only for mobile devices or also available for desktop?
Currently, it is available for real devices. We would love, like I mentioned this before, we try to match up each region with the demands from users, right, from our customers, right, because we want to make sure that we're bringing the right solutions to market. We would love to hear that feedback, right? If you're looking for US East to have VMs available, Mac available, Linux, these types of things would be really great to hear. I would, go back to the portal, submit that idea, make sure that we hear that from you. It'll be very helpful to prioritize it.
With Orchestrate, is the CI agent which kicks off the remote execution tied up for the duration of the execution, or is it a fire and forget?
That is completely up to you. You can fire and forget it. So Sauce, it's literally an API that you call, or as I said, I think Sauce Control, the command line tool, is much easier and simpler to work with. You can totally just fire and forget that. And then we're literally providing all that infrastructure for you without you needing to run anything in your CI. It really does sort of depend on how you want to deal with the results and how you in your CI or how or just how you run your automated tests, you deal with the results that you get back from that test run. Like if you're, for example, if your CI is gated to where the test must return back and they must be all successful before the build continues, well, it's going to have to either wait for the response or you could poll if you wanted to, right? So there's some mechanisms in place here if you're really trying to optimize those CI costs.
What AI features are planned for future updates?
I'll touch a little on that. One thing to mention, the failure analysis components are powered by some machine learning technologies based on the data set that we have already. In addition, there's some capabilities in the low code components of SOS. We didn't talk about that today, but the notion of how we author tests is generated by some AI technologies. Looking ahead, a lot of exciting work, obviously, with ChatGPT and large language models. Actually, just today, funny, on Hacker News, somebody was talking about log summarization. And it's something that we've been exploring internally as well. We have a team of data scientists that's actually staffed and focused on AI and ML. And there are a few capabilities, log summarization and asset summarization is one of them. I mentioned low code generation, something we already do and looking to improve. So those are the areas that we're thinking about there, and definitely don't want to jump the gun, but later on this year, hope to have some more announcements in that area.
For Orchestrate, I believe the docs mentioned Docker Hub. Do you support other image repos like AWS?
Yes, definitely. All Docker registries are generally have like a standard API that they support, and that's what we integrate into. In the docs, I just use Docker Hub because it's it's a simple one to get started with, and everybody it's basically a simple one to get started with that everybody is kind of familiar with. But yeah, we have customers using GitHub has a registry, GitLab has a registry, AWS, GCR, Quay. They all follow the same standard API, which would integrate just fine in SOS Orchestrate.
Currently, we have the extended debugging and hard files. Is there any plans for supporting Selenium dev tools with SOS execution?
I think that this is generally referring to the Chrome DevTools protocol support so that we can get some more deeper debugging within your Selenium scripts. Yes, we are currently implementing this and trying to, I don't have a timeline just yet, but we do have work being done to enable Chrome DevTools support in our Selenium stack. Again, it always does help to submit this need and these ideas to our portal. That way it always helps us stay on top of what's the most important to our customers. So definitely promote going to the portal and submitting that idea.
Will orchestrated mode be the only option, or the current one will still be available? Concerned with access to internal enterprise network.
Great question. We will definitely continue to invest in the remote execution mode that you currently enjoy today. This is in addition to that. As much as we're excited about SOS Orchestrate because of the value it provides, we still see a ton of value and usage continuing with the normal mode. So we will continue to heavily invest in it from a reliability standpoint, from a performance standpoint, and feature standpoint. So nothing's going to go away there. I'll comment a little bit on the access to the private network as well, because that is definitely a situation. But for those who are familiar with our SOS Connect proxy tool, it's being integrated into SOS Orchestrate so that your test scripts and the framework around it, essentially the container that your test will run in, can utilize a SOS Connect tunnel to connect back into your private network, whether that be to invoke an API internally or submit some reports internally, or whatever you need.
Insights tags are great. We started to use them to identify test environments. Any plans to more formalize data per test environment?
That's an interesting thought. Love, again, the portal's a great place for that. If we could explain a little more like how you consider those environments. I think there's definitely ways to pick up on metadata and figure out ways to apply those as tags. Nothing concrete, but definitely an interesting idea.
Any plans for adding filter for failed tests inside the automated test build?
I think I'll happily double check on that. I think that is something that's, if not there, like I think about the filters and the tags, that should be pretty reasonable, if not there now.
Okay. How do we handle test data from a database handled in SaaS Orchestrate?
Test data from a database. So this goes back to, I think that how your test scripts get that test data. And if they currently, at least if I understand the question correctly, right? If they currently are maybe invoking or talking to that database or invoking an API in your internal network to get test data, that will continue to work with the integration of Sauce Connect, like I said, right? So you'll deploy a Sauce Connect tunnel in your that connects to the container, and then it can still have access. There are some other mechanisms that we have in place though, where you can, as part of the API or the Sauce control interface, to start a Sauce Orchestrate job, you can pass test data into it, and then that data will, you can basically upload a file or inject environment variables if that's what is better, that then get injected into the running container itself. So you have a couple options at your disposal.
Is there a tentative timeline for Sauce Labs support for Playwright plus Python?
I don't believe we have. I would need to understand what the current gaps really are. Maybe there's no Sauce control runner for that. Definitely, go back to the portal. It'd be great to, you submit something to the portal like that. What it does is it triggers our product team to review it, and then we'll probably ask to have a little bit more of a deeper conversation with you to understand exactly the use case, make sure we understand it so that we can accurately respond to it.
I'll just take one more because we're at time. Is there any documentation for Sauce orchestration setup?
Definitely. In our docs.saucelabs.com, you'll see a set of pages all around this that help you get started. So take a look at that, and I think it's in there. It's called hosted orchestration, but we're, now we have a name for it called Sauce Orchestrate. So we're making those updates. Super excited. Please reach out to your CSM if you ever want to get some more in-depth details about it. Would love to talk to you sort of one-on-one about it.